And welcome, ladies and gentlemen, back to the Valley of the Judged. I am your one and only gaming monk, better known as Mildra, and with me, as always, is my good brother here in the temple, the master of the Sword Illumination, good brother Monarch.
So I've started replaying Wild Arms 4, and I think I'm starting to realize why a lot of people think of that as kind of the black sheep of the Wild Arms games.
Fuck, I could have told you that. I've been calling it Cyber Arms for years.
Look, I played it at release. Like, I remembered it being good. Like, I'm not gonna jump in with the people saying it wasn't a good game. But I kind of get why it's a bit of an outcast compared to the others.
Everything that it was more or less attempting to do, I think, was better done in 5. Oh.
Yeah.
I've seen some people try and say that XF is the black sheep, but I'm like, XF is certainly not not very forgiving, but I wouldn't call that a black sheep.
I never made it too far into XF. I've been meaning to get back to it one day. I do remember finding out you could quickly break the game by taking that one guy or that one class that could break weapons.
Mm-hmm.
And you could apply the 100% accuracy rate, and it works on that. And considering this is one of those games, like 80% of your strength is coming from your weapons, you could just gimp any enemy unit you want in one shot.
Yeah, but how's that any different? I know some people will point that out as if it's some massive design failing. To that I say, don't throw stones in that glass house, because we all abuse the item duplication glitch, and we all know that calculator is completely and utterly borked.
As far as item glitches, I don't really count that as bad game design. That's a technical flaw.
I hope you're not about to defend the calculator.
The calculator is broken if you really want to sit down and do math and like plan it. I was like, nope, I'm not even going to try the calculator. I don't want to think that much. The game already gave you TG Sid.
Mm-hmm.
They just hand you the broken unit for nothing.
Yeah.
So sure, why not? Just give me the calculator to break the game too. It doesn't matter at that point.
Point is, when it comes to game balance, if somebody wants to throw a certain thing and say that it's broken, all I have to say is, do you have any idea how little that narrows it down? Because every one of your favorite games has one exploit that gets abused. The name of the exploit may change, but the principle does not.
I'm only bothered when they just kind of immediately hand it to you. It's immediately obvious, and you're kind of asking yourself why at that point.
Mm-hmm.
If you have to work and spend time to figure it out, it doesn't bother me. You figured it out, you earned it.
Yeah.
But that's an entirely different topic. We're getting back to Titan Effect today.
Yes. After a 1-week diversion talking about cats.
Yes.
I still can't believe we actually covered that. We are back once again with the wonderful world of Titan Effect, and what we're originally going to be covering for this, I had scheduled for 2 parts, but when I looked at the actual page count of the subject matter and the amount of detail we go into things, I decided it was better to fold them into one. So this will be the finale of our look at Titan Effect. And starting off with the Debriefing log, which covers additional rules and guidelines for more flavor to the campaign. Essentially the optional rules. First being psychic energies. This is ultimately a narrative thing, basically that people using certain psychic abilities have certain energy detections or the like. And more specifically, the ability to manipulate psychic energy. The first is through certain drugs. Though there is a note saying The GM must be careful when using these rules. They're here to make the setting more interesting and create good challenges for the players. Therefore, the GM should use these rules sparingly or risk frustrating the player. Ephemeral is a psychic suppressant drug, usually administered by mouth in pill form or an injection. Once administered, you have to succeed at a vigor roll at -2. If you fail, you can't use your powers for 2d6 hours, doubled with a critical failure. A success reduces the duration to 2d6 minutes, while a raise negates the effect. Ephemeral doesn't affect bio-augmented soldiers and natural therianthropes. It's also expensive to produce. Though there is a rumor the Olympians are trying to make a weaponized version to be used with dart guns and rifles. Then we have psychic devices, starting with the anti-psi generator, which neutralizes psychic powers but doesn't affect bioaugmented soldiers and natural therianthropes. Psychic entities like shades temporarily dissipate inside an anti-psi generator field. It has to be shut down or with an electronics or repair roll, or destroyed. It has a hardness 12 to reverse its effects. And it is basically a psychic dampening field. Then we have the ATBC, or Anti-Telepathic Bioneural Chip. When implanted inside the brain, this biochip protects users against mental intrusion and other telepathic powers. Due to its costly and risky procedure, only a small group of select people have access to this implant, including high-ranking members of the Olympians. People with a ATBC have a +4 to resist mind-based powers and against mental attacks. Then we have the Psychic Shield, which can block ESP and telepathic powers. Unfortunately, it also causes interference with electronic devices, which limits their use. There's also the fact that apparently water jams ESP-based powers, especially remote viewing. If the target is on or near water, then the Esper subtracts -2 from their roll. If the target is in the middle of the sea, the penalty is -4. If you're deep underwater, like inside a submarine, the roll is at -6. And underground environments have the same effect on an ESP as water. Locating a target inside a small cave or underground bunker requires a roll at -2, -4 if they're inside a large mine or underground facility. I'm not sure how often I would use these rules, but I do think that they're good for answering the question of why don't you just use ESP all the time?
Yeah. I will say being on or near water is a little weird. Like, chilling next to the lake is going to make you harder to pick up.
I suppose I could liken it to how being around certain substances messes with radio waves, so it's hard for communication. You know, it's hard.
Yeah,
go ahead.
I can see it. It just seems near is a little bit weird.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying I'm against it. I might not do that bit personally, but it's just odd. That's all.
Then we have clearance levels. Basically, before each mission, Spear operatives have access to any relevant information to help them achieve their objective. However, as they gain more experience, they'll likely progress within the Spear and gain additional clearance levels, learning more about the Great Game. And the level 1, most maintenance and personnel have this. Minimal access to SpearNet and only a general idea about the mission and operations. Level 2, access to essential information to accomplish a given mission. Level 3, more relevant information that's too sensitive for lower levels. Analysts, senior operatives, and security personnel are all level 3. This also includes seasoned and veteran characters. Level 4, senior analysts and highly qualified operatives, including heroic characters. Level 5, unit commanders and key members of Spear. This includes legendary tier characters. Level 6, complete access to SpearNet. While the characters can't usually have a higher clearance level than 5, they can temporarily get level 6 for some high-risk missions. And level 7 is only available to executive committee members and the chairman.
Yes. After that, though, we get the different types of missions you might be going on.
Yep.
For the note box, we've got civilian missions. For these missions, operatives use false identities to cover past regular civilians. Military, we got most military operations take place in remote areas, wilderness, or facilities. And on-site procurement. These missions are high-risk operations that forbid the use of any weapons or equipment that can be traced to the Spear. But then we got a nice couple pages outlining the kind of steps that you're going to go through with the mission. Mission briefing, it's pretty self-explanatory. Gear up is the section where you're going to be purchasing your gears with your gear points. We've covered that process in one of our previous streams. Then we get cover. For civilian missions, each operative receives a cover provided by the intelligence division with a fake ID and other necessary documents. If the mission requires that the operatives impersonate government agents or local police, they also get the proper accreditations. We got a short little list of just examples. You can also make up others, but it's nice to have the examples here.
Yeah, we have a Viana International, which is a UK private military and security company. Kestrel Export, a import-export company based in the US. Quantic Technologies, a software company based in Montreal. Promstone Foundation, a NGO based in Oxford. Then the next phase is logistics. Most of the time, operatives will have their vehicles on site during the mission, but the operatives take, in some cases, they have to take, say, commercial flights for civilian missions, or go by trains and buses, and just use the Savage Worlds rules for those kind of stats. The unit may also supply a vehicle with a pilot for insertions in hostile territory or military operations. For extractions, Spear uses the same methods used by military forces and PMCs. Boats, planes, helicopters, etc. However, a plane or a helicopter cannot land in some situations. In that case, there are 3 principal methods that are used. Hearst, or helicopter rope suspension technique. Basically a rope deployed from a helicopter. So essentially, the good old rappelling up to a helicopter to get out. There is also parachuting, mainly for stealth insertions. There's the good old halo jump, or high altitude low opening. I've always heard it as high altitude low orbit, because you're jumping from ridiculously high, as it says 15,000 to 35,000 feet.
Yeah, I figure they probably should have went with orbit there, but they do it with high opening too.
And then there's the HAHO, which is essentially you dropping from a high altitude and then deploying your parachute a few seconds after the jump. Of course, landing, you have to roll an athletics roll with -2 at night and another -2 under challenging conditions. If the roll is success, you land 2d6 yards from your designated landing zone, doubled in high winds. With a raise, you land directly on your target. A failure means you land 2d6 times 10 yards from the target. And then there's the STARS method, or Fulton's surface-to-air recovering system. Another name for this that you may be familiar with, depending on what movies you watched, is Skyhook. Each operative has a special harness equipped with a self-inflating balloon that carries a reinforced lift line. An aircraft, usually a transport model, fitted with a special hook on its nose, catches the line and lifts up the operatives. Then someone inside pulls up the line to bring the operatives on board. It can take several rounds or minutes between inflating the balloon and when the aircraft recovers them. That time can create dramatic situations where the characters have to defend themselves while waiting for transport. The first model could carry 1 or 2 people, but the Spears Research Division improved the Fulton system to carry up to 6 operatives. Because you might remember the Hong Kong scene in, say, The Dark Knight. That's the system that this is referring to. And so it is nice that we're drawing upon some stuff that actually got some use. Obviously we don't know how much use Skyhook got because all that stuff's going to be classified, but still. And the last phase is debriefing, which is exactly what you think it is. Personally, there is one method of insertion that I'd probably end up going with just so I can really hammer home the Metal Gear comparison. Insertion via torpedo.
But after that, we got some notes on the old-timer edge.
Mm-hmm.
We won't go through each one of these individuals aspects, but effectively, if you take that edge, you get one of these random aspects.
Mm-hmm. Either draw karma. No, sorry, not draw karma. Bad karma. You were tracked by somebody. You're blackmailed by somebody. You have a dependent. You're paranoid. You're somehow damaged. With the one-eye hindrance or major slow hindrance. You have a visible scar. You were terrorized by something that happened. You were weakened by what happened. You got burned. You got sanctioned, so you got in some trouble. You were marked for death by someone. You were brainwashed by a faction and can be activated, or you're a double agent, whether willingly or unwillingly. But after that, there's the director's section opens up with a lot of history on the setting, as well as a watch list for various types of threats and a most wanted list. But then, first thing we get is gear conversion.
Now, this isn't really a system. It's just a couple pages of converting some stuff from Savage Worlds into just how you'd handle it with the equipment points here in Titan Effect.
Yeah, the stats don't change for them. You can just carry those over. The only thing that changes is going from the dollar cost to equipment points.
Yeah. I think when we initially put this in the notes to cover, we thought there was going to be like an actual conversion thing, but nah, it's just a couple pages.
But I do want to also touch on missions, since I had that in the title, so I'd be remiss if I didn't cover it. This is a nice little they have a nice little way of using the cards to generate a random mission. So step 1 is the mission. Draw 1 card and refer to the setup here. And if you draw a Joker, you draw 2 cards, and it's a multi-part mission. So the first step is what the objective of the mission is. Second is location. And you refer to the suit to determine what type of area the thing is in. And the type of location. So, for example, a Two of Clubs would be a wilderness estate, or a sea estate, if you want to go the James Bond route, of the private island. Sorry. Step 3 is opposition, i.e. who's going to try and shoot at you when things go south, and they will go south. That's done with 1 card. Step 4 is complication, because the mission never goes according to plan. I do like that the Joker for this is Murphy's Law. And I also appreciate the King, which is we weren't there, i.e. you can't trigger any alarm. Because we all know somebody who tries to do a no detection run in a stealth game. But then we also have a short list of mission hooks, which you can pick from or just roll 1d6 depending on the organization. These aren't necessary, but if you need an idea on how to make the mission more interesting, the option's there for you.
Yeah.
So we've got 1 set for Ares, 1 set for the Directorate, 1 set for the Olympians, 1 set for the Order of Holy Mystery, 1 for Typhon, and 1 for other entries.
I like little things like these mission guidelines, just especially if the DM just maybe didn't have time to put something together for that session.
Yeah.
You know what? We still want to play. Here we go. We can get something together and have fun running. I like things like this.
Mm-hmm.
Not necessary, but nice to include.
Yeah. Several of them reference the watch list, which is a list of particular threats. And we also have a brief adventure known as Operation Sarangu, which isn't all that lengthy. It's only about 6 pages. And the final thing is a short comic referred to as Titan Effect Legacy that only goes for a few pages. I don't recall who the artist was for it, but in a weird way, it ends up reminding me of Ashley Wood when they were doing comics. I'm not sure if Ashley Wood's still doing stuff. The last I saw was a motion comic version of Metal Gear Solid. But then we have an index. I really like that all of the page numbers are hyperlinked.
Yes.
I'd imagine that was a pain in the ass to do, but it's ultimately worth it. And at the back end, we have these little sections that can be hyperlinked. And then that more or less covers everything. So with that said, what is your take on Titan Effect?
Yeah. Now, I'm going to forego kind of giving this a rating like how we would do for some of the others by virtue of the fact I'm still not really familiar with the Savage worlds that this is based on. Mm-hmm. What I will say, if you like the Savage World system, and you like the setting this game has, I think it gets what it wants to do done. It's simple, easy to follow along with everything in it. I'd be willing to pick up and learn a bit more about Savage Worlds if someone wanted to play Titan Effect. So, overall, I'd say I'm kind of fond of it. But with an asterisk.
Yeah. For me, as somebody who is more familiar with Savage Worlds, I would say I enjoy most of what is here. There is only one particular thing, and this is not on the fault of Nome. But there's one thing that's a kind of elephant in the room when it comes to doing Titan Effect, at least through Savage Worlds. And that is the powers system. And the issue there is that I think when it comes to the psychics, which is where the powers part comes from, it does kind of thematically clash with the superpower system that's in, well, the Supers Guide for Savage Worlds. I know that there's an option if you don't have the Supers Guide, but even then, using the power system that Savage Worlds has, I'm not entirely sure if it quite fits the theme that Titan Effect is going for. And the fact that due to it using that as a base, it has to just list out individual potential powers that could be used for the 4 different types, I think does hurt things a little bit. And I think that's going to be the stumbling point, for the same reason that power systems in most Supers games are a stumbling point. Late last year, Neff and I covered the quick start for City of Mist. And one of the things we brought up is that even though it's using Powered by the Apocalypse, it's straining under that. Like, it barely has a lot of connective tissue with other Powered by the Apocalypse games by comparison. And I see something similar with Titan Effect, although not to the same extent. Which is why I'm actually glad that with the Year Zero version that's in the works, that because of the fact that there isn't a power system to go within the Year Zero SRD, a power system for Titan Effect has to be written for it, instead of putting a round peg in a square hole. But really, that's the only real issue that I have. I know that there's some alternative setups, and it's really a case where the psychic abilities that we have here don't quite fit in the way a power system for a Supers game works. It's a clashing of styles. Am I making sense?
Yeah, you make sense.
Now, even with that, presentation is very much on point. I appreciate it wearing its influences directly on its sleeve. I do think that the navigation on everything is pretty much on point. I can't think of any complaint I have about navigation here. I do think it's a nice touch that you could easily use it as a kind of sci-fi'd up data pad if you're reading the PDF on a tablet. Because some of the hyperlink pages that we see very much are trying to go for that particular vibe. Especially with the whole spear login thing we see between chapters. When it came to the character creation part, I wasn't the biggest fan of the fact that I had to go back and look up what custom rules were being referenced. But that's a consequence of this being a campaign setting for Savage Worlds as opposed to something standalone. And I think Titan Effect is something, as a setting, is something that benefits more from a more purpose-built standalone affair as opposed to adapting an existing system. And technically speaking, the Year Zero version is adapting the Year Zero engine into Titan Effect. But that's only covering the core mechanic. Everything else is going to be tailor-built for it, especially powers. And
yeah, I think any kind of complaint I'd have about this for how it's set up, organized, is a lot more because, licensing issues, like how much could they have put in this book? Excuse me. But how much could they have put in this that they wanted to, that they possibly couldn't have? So any issues I have for like formatting or setup for what's included, I think is more out of their hands, so I'm not going to hold it against them.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I'm with you there. Like, just how it's presented, the style, the flair, like, that's all on point here.
It very much is. And I do think that what's going to make things a lot easier when it comes to converting over to year 0, because that's when that comes, is it's using the 2-die variant instead of using the D6 pool variant. I think the first time I saw the 2-die version was when Twilight 2000 came back. Because instead of using the D6 pool where only 6s matter, like in, say, Alien, it's using a similar die setup to Savage Worlds. You know, an attribute die and a skill die. The value is different die sizes. You're trying to aim for multiples of 4. Which I think is going to make conversion of some of the existing material a hell of a lot easier. But I would say for those who are diehard Savage Worlds guys, this is definitely a strongly recommended. And for those who want to do something more on its own, I would suggest keeping an eye out for the Year 0 version. There is a quick start of that version that is available. Just look up Titan Effect Quick Start and you'll be able to find it pretty easy. And I know that a proper setup is in the works. But even with all of that, given what's present and the strength of its setting, I think the benefits outweigh any potential negatives. But for a guy like me who goes with a bunch of different systems, I'm in a tricky situation. But it's not impossible to work with. So, with that said, I think I should talk a little bit about what we've got coming. So, since we're between seasons, the one-shot rule for that applies. Next week, we're talking about a Dwarven-focused game called The Dig. And after the... What?
I just have that Diggy Hole song in my head now.
It doesn't help that Windrose did effectively the definitive version of that song.
I heard their version first.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't even know it wasn't an original the first time I heard it.
Yeah.
But it's great.
And the week after that, so starting in March, we are going to be delving into a D5 based game called Shroud of the Ancients. Which, that's a die type we don't see all that often. So that'll be interesting to delve into when the time comes.
Like there has to be a way to do that without having an actual D5 dice.
It's probably just going to be like a D10 cut in half. I'm going into this one completely blind. But we will cross that bridge when we get to it. But until then, on behalf of the good brothers present and not present, my name is Mildra. I am your gaming monk. Stay fucking frosty, everybody.
上洛が上少年関税を往年関税を